cards like this. Okay, so the story is, it's actually a story towards the end of Shmuel base. We've done the whole of Shmuel Aleph, we're coming towards the end of Shmuel base, and it seems from the introduction to the story that the story did not take place here and now. It's just a story which isn't really related to the events of David's life. It's not like part of the storyline. It's a story that happened sometime during his reign, and is not really connected to before. Doesn't follow some previous story or introduce some after story. Therefore, it's just put at the end. That's what it looks like. We had the same concept in Shoftim. Then the Book of Shoftim, there's a few stories there, and it's very unclear when exactly they happened in the storyline. They're not part of the storyline. They're just stories, and therefore they're not part of the pattern. And therefore they're just put at the end. And they happen sometime during the Shoftim, just like the Book of Ruth. When did it happen? During the time of the Shoftim. When? We don't know. You can work it out from references, but it's not important to know because it's not part of the storyline. It's just a story which stands on its own. And that's why this says at the beginning of this chapter, chapter 21, this story happened during the reign of King David, which is obvious because it's here, right? Because it's trying to say when it happened is not important to know. It might have happened now, but it's not really important, right? It's not as a result of Avshalom or before Avshalom or something to do with that. Okay, what was it? There was a famine, 3-year famine. 3-year famine.
Can I write this with a pen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Unless it's got somebody else's name on it. That's the whole point. That's the reason why it's written like that. Right? We're on page
49, no?
49, yes, 49, chapter 21. We're about to go over the page. We started this chapter yesterday. There was a 3-year famine, and David didn't know what it was about. So after 3 years, he finally asked God. Now, how do you ask God? So the general assumption is you ask the Urim V'Tumim. The Urim V'Tumim, you know what the Urim V'Tumim is, Ilan?
Not really.
It's the thing that the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, used to wear.
Oh, okay.
Right? It had 12 stones on it, each with the different names of the tribes on it. And the Kohen Gadol, it could be used to convey God's message. If he didn't have a prophet to ask, right, the king or a representative of the king or the head of the army had the right to ask the Kohen Gadol. He would stand in front of the Holy of Holies. Right? I've seen pictures of it, not photos, but drawings of it, so I know information from this drawing. I don't know if it's accurate, right? Which has the curtain open, the Kohen Gadol stands in front, the king stands behind, the king asks the question, should we go out and fight? And it will answer, Lamed from Levi, Aleph from Reuven, which is Lo. Or if God says Ken, it will be a Kaf from Yisachar, a Nun from Shimon, which is Ken. They won't say that because you can't say Ken in Hebrew. Ken is modern Hebrew. But anyway, that's the point. The king asked the question and the answer lights up in the words on the Choshen Mishpat.
So David was a Navi. So write it just...
Well, yes and no. The Navi can't just say, God, what do you have to say? Moshe Rabbeinu could do that. You understand?
Only Moshe.
Yes. Moshe Rabbeinu could just say, I don't know the answer, so wait a minute, I'll go and ask God. Moshe does that, right? No other Navi does that, right? So Navi had to wait till he was, A, he has to be on that level of inspiration, and B, God may not want to communicate with him because whatever. But
Abraham, I feel like could do that too, a little bit.
I don't know. Maybe. It doesn't say so. Yeah? He does seem to communicate a lot with God. The question is, that was God communicating with him, right? But he doesn't say, God, what do you have to say about this? Moshe Rabbeinu seems to have had a hotline to God. Just pick up the phone and say, what do you say about this?
Right.
That's why Moshe Rabbeinu is seen as the father of all prophets. He's a different. Rambam describes how his prophecy was a completely different level. It wasn't just greater. It was what do you say? Qualitatively different, not just quantitatively different. Anyway, so that's what David seems to do. He asked God. That's what it usually means, and God gave him a threefold answer. 3 parts of the answer, right? All of them a bit unclear. One was, it's about Shaul, number 1. Shaul was the previous king who had died in battle. Number 2, the house of blood, right? Number 3, Shaul killed the Givonim, right? We mentioned the Givonim were a group of people who they lived in the town of Givon. They're originally Canaanites, Amorites, who had tricked Yehoshua into accepting them to convert to Judaism, in short. Okay? And Yehoshua didn't like the trick, but on the other hand, they'd sworn they wouldn't do anything to them, and therefore they left them. They didn't do anything. And they became the workers in the Mishkan. That was their...
Who was?
The Givonim. They were Gibeonites. So technically they were Jewish. They'd gone through some type of conversion,
Oh, really? They weren't the Kohanim or the Levi'im?
No. The Kohen and Levim were the ones who did the temple service. And I said worked in the Mishkan.
That's way
I
before
meant,
the temple.
No. That wasn't the point. I meant they did the hard labor. They were the ones who chopped the wood. They were the ones who got the water. They were the wood choppers and the water drawers for the Mishkan. The Kohanim and the Levim were the ones who did the service. They did the singing, and they did the choir, and they did the orchestra, and the Kohanim did the animals and all that sort of stuff. But the blue collar workers in the Mishkan, the ones who cleaned out the bathrooms, the ones who swept the floor, that was the Gibeon. That was their job.
And the Mishkan existed simultaneously with the...
No, there was no Beis HaMikdash at the time of this story. The Beis HaMikdash was built by Shaul HaMelech, the son of King David HaMelech.
Okay.
Okay. The Mishkan was at the time that, not at this time, at the time that we're referring to, was in a town called Noiv. Okay. The people in during David's reign, during King Shaul's reign, David had been an outlaw. Right? Shaul was his father-in-law, but David was in trouble. Shaul thought that David wanted to kill him. Doesn't make him, that's a long story, but let's try to be very, very brief. And Shaul tried to kill David. David ran away, and David went to the Kohanim in Noiv to ask them for help because he was starving. Okay, the Kohen Gadol gave him food, and then there was someone there who reported the Kohen Gadol to King Shaul, and Shaul wiped out all the Kohanim of Noiv on the claim that they had sided with David. He saw David as a rebel, right? Which he wasn't, but that's the way Shaul saw it. So Shaul's set mind saw it like that. And anyone who helped David was a rebel, and he didn't take any chances, and he killed all the Kohanim of Noiv. Including in that was also a persecution of the Gibeonim, because the Gibeonim were also seen as helpers. Maybe not helpers to the same extent. All of this is not true, but I'm talking from Shaul's mind. The way Shaul perceived it was the Gibeonim were obviously at it as well, because the Gibeonim were the ones who worked in the Mishkan. And therefore, so some of the Gibeonim were killed as a result of this action of Shaul. In addition, it seems from the verses that Shaul used this as a pretext to try and throw them out of the land. Because, we didn't explain it so well yesterday. The point is that really they cheated on us. They right from the beginning, hundreds of years before this story, they're the ones who came to pretend that they'd come from some foreign country and they wanted to make peace with us, and they actually were Canaanites. And we had a commandment to wipe all the Canaanites out. And they knew this, and that's why they were scared. Right? And they pretended to us that they'd come from some far-off land, and we made peace with them. And then we found out, we felt we couldn't do anything to them because we'd sworn to them we wouldn't do anything to them. But now Shaul had a pretext to get rid of them because they'd sided with David. Right? So Shaul, in all his, on behalf of the Jewish people, because really we didn't like these Gibeonim ever, because they were these nasty guys who had cheated us. Okay? And we'd gone, we accepted them because we had no choice. And now we had an excuse. You sided with David, you sided with the enemy, out. So Shaul tried to do it. It seems that from the text he was not very successful, right? He didn't actually manage to drive them out of the country, but he did manage to give them a bad name as a result of this, that they were the enemy. And these are three claims against David and the Jewish people of why there's a famine. A, to do with Shaul, didn't say what, but we said in the name of Chazal, our rabbis tell us, that the first claim was that Shaul was buried in a hurry without a proper royal burial, because he was killed in battle together with his sons, and they were very quickly buried, and there was no proper burial, there's no proper eulogy, and therefore God was upset.
Shaul didn't kill himself?
Yes, but that's another whole story. There's no need to add that detail, because that's not the point.
Okay.
Right? Yes, it's true, but if you think that that's held against him for that, then you're wrong. Okay? Because we don't eulogize people who commit suicide. So it's clear that the Tanach and Chazal don't view Shaul's suicide as being a regular suicide, which is I mean, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that we have to be very brief about that story, but otherwise you get to something anyway. Okay, so when we do Shmuel Aleph, we'll talk about Shaul's suicide. Yes, but for the purpose of this point, it's not relevant. Okay, so Shaul died in battle, and he was not buried with a royal burial, and during the battle, that wasn't held against anybody because we're still at war, but eventually we had peace and we were in control and there was nothing to worry about. That was something that should have been taken care of, and it wasn't. Number two, the murderous house. Right, now that's not clear what that refers to. Probably in the context refers to Shaul wiping out the people of the Kohanim of Nov. So that's also held against. But why is that held against? People had nothing to do with that. Shaul had something to do with that. Right? The first one you could say, okay, that's held against the people. The people should have people under the rule of David and whatever should have done something about this. Right? But the fact that Shaul wiped out the town of Givon, the Kohanim of the Mishkan can't be held against the Jewish people. That can't be. It might be a factor, but it's not the major factor. The next point could be more serious. Shaul killed some of the Givonim in the event, but they also had a claim against him because as a result of that and the desire to drive them out of the country, the Shaul made them into a ridiculed, hated, derided people, right? And therefore people were not respectful to these Givonim and didn't treat them like they should have done. So that could be held against the people. Okay. So David says we'll have to do something about this. So David brings them in and he says, what can I do to appease you? Right? To rectify the eulogy, that's relatively easy to do. Okay. So we'll get around to doing that. Okay. But how do we do about the Givonim? They seem to be the ones who really got a grievance against us, the way we treated them and the way they continue to be treated badly. What can we do? So maybe they'll say, well, if you stop treating us badly and we'll be nice to you. But David says, well, can I give you some type of financial pitsuyim, how do you say that? Reparations, right? For being not nice to you. They said, no, we don't want money, silver, we don't want to kill any Jews. No, so that immediately, David said, what? I never suggested you should kill anybody, right? Yeah, but then, but we want to kill 7 of Shaul's descendants. So that's what we want to do. We want to take our revenge, and you already see immediately from that request is they're not really Jewish, these people. They've gone technically through a conversion, and we can't sort of undo that, can't undo a person's conversion. But usually people convert out of sincere will to join the Jewish people. That's how most people convert. And therefore, they may have been born not Jewish, but they've obviously got goals and aspirations which are praiseworthy. They're not just pagans. These guys continue to be pagans even though they went through it. The only reason why they converted was to save their skins, because otherwise Joshua would have wiped them out and the rest of the Canaanites would. So they didn't really want to be Jewish. And therefore, though technically they went through a conversion, they never actually developed Jewish customs.
I never knew there was this whole story about the Givonim and the tabernacle and the politics behind it.
Okay, now in rabbinic literature, these Givonim have another name. They're called Nesinim. You'll see lots of Mishnayos about the status of Nesinim. It's basically a rabbinically forbidden marriage. A Jew may not marry a Nesin, and a Nesina, and a Jewess may not marry a Nosin. It's like all over the place. This, when he wants to give an example of a rabbinically forbidden marriage, this is the example of it. Right? Who forbade it? David HaMelech forbade it at the end of this story. Not yet. At the time, this time, people, they kept to themselves. They were like a different sect. So, but it was never prohibited to marry them. Right? Yoshua made them into a different strata of society. They were the workers in the Mishkan. That was their job. Which may be a nice job, right? To work in the Mishkan. You wouldn't want to work in the Mishkan. Yeah, but it was a bit of a dirty job. It was a low-income job, right? They weren't lawyers and doctors, or that wasn't the job they had. And in those days, society sort of put you into a little box. You couldn't get out of that. I don't know exactly how it worked, but the whole world's been like that for thousands of years, right? But people had certain jobs, and there was aristocratic, and there was landowners, and they okay. So that's what they were. And as a result of this story, David HaMelech and his Sanhedrin made a rabbinic ban on marrying these people, as we can see, because they're really not nice. They're Givonim. They don't, in rabbinic literature, they're not called Givonim, they're called Nesinim. But it's the same people.
So they can only marry each other.
Correct.
Men and women.
Yeah. That's, maybe there's other people that can marry as well, but basically they're regular Jew that can't marry. Regular Jew or Jewess. Okay? Now, but they could at the time of this story. Why we banned them is because David says, well, who would want to marry people who want that sort of revenge? Oh, I offered them $50,000 each for each of their 7, because there were 7 Gibeonim who were killed. That's what they wanted. Right? I didn't accept that. No, we won't accept that. No, we want blood. That's the only thing we'll forgive the Jews if we. So, in the end, David agreed to it. That's what we got up to yesterday, which is shocking.
Agreed to
Their demand. They would only forgive the Jews for what they did to them
if they let them kill 7.
if they let them kill 7 of Shaul's children and grandchildren. Now, the question is, halachically, is it unacceptable to agree to something like that? Go and come to you and say, we're going to kill you all unless you hand somebody over. So you have to let them go and kill you all. You can't hand somebody over, which is basically what happened. If you don't hand the job to people, then you'll all die of famine. So you would have expected a normal halachic, if things are governed by normal halachic rules, that David should have said, I'm sorry, nothing I can do, you'll all die. So we'll all die. Rather than give somebody else to be killed, we would all rather die. That's the normal rules. We suggested there may be 2 differences over here. A, that David was a king, and kings are allowed to make political considerations in their decisions, what they feel is best for society, even if there are innocent people suffering, right? Now, again, you have to get this right. We're not asking why did God do this. God makes his own considerations, right? God says, I know what's best. These people, these 7 descendants of Shaul have already reached their potential. The best place for them is to come and sit next to me in the world to come. I mean, I don't know. We don't have to, why do kids die of cot death? Why? Is that fair? We don't ask questions of why did 300,000 people die in a tsunami in Thailand? Yeah, why? Because God runs the world. That's why. Those are silly. I mean, not silly questions, but they're questions which we all had to deal with a long time ago. The question isn't on God. The question is on David. How can David do this? It doesn't. We have got rules. We've got to play God, right? So apparently the king is allowed to. He's not governed. Obviously, the king has to put up the fill in and keep Shabbos. But when he makes decisions which are national decisions, which affect hundreds of millions of people, he can say, look, I'm against the war. What should I do? We should let everybody die, or we should just kill these 7 people? Doesn't sound very fair, but that's the best thing to do. Or they're going to lose the whole country. So a rabbi can't make a decision like that. You can't make a decision like that. The king may be able to make a decision like that. That may be why this is different. It could also be that David asked God, just like at the beginning of the story he asked God. He could be up at this point, he also asked God, God, what should I do? God said, I want you to kill these people. Once you do that, there's no question anymore, because God does what he wants. Just like God can kill them, right? And no one will have any questions why God did that. So God can tell David to do it as well.
Were Jewish kings ever ask prophets what to do?
Yeah. So I'm saying, you could have asked the prophet, or could have asked Urim and Tumim. But it's clear at the beginning of the story, he asked God. It says, Vayavakesh David es Pnei Hashem. David sought out the face of God. That means he asked God. Exactly how he asked him, it's not clear. But just like the beginning of the story, he asked God, what's the reason for this famine? It could be at this point, though it doesn't say so, it could be that he went back to God. Okay, now you told me the reason. Now I found out what the given want. Should I agree to the demands? And God said yes. Right? That's possible. I mean, there's 2 ways you could take this. Either the king has the right to do this, or God has the right to do this. In which case, God ask God. Why God would want to do this, we'll have to see. You see, even God wanted the deaths of these 7 people, let's say, whatever reason, right? But why to hang them? Why would God want to do that? That's also against Jewish law, which they want to hang these people. Usually, Jewish law doesn't hang anybody, right? It's not one of the 4 death sentences.
Stoning,
What's
fire, drowning, and
not drowning, strangulation and decapitation, right? Okay. Drowning is a form of strangulation, right? So a person who
Chenek is
strangulation.
There's
There's no hang. No, we don't hang.
How do you
take a rope, right? And you put it around the guy's neck. One guy pulls on this side until it breaks his neck. That's how you do chenek. Okay? They hang people after they're dead.
Jews do that?
Yes. In one example, right, which is a guy who's been stoned. As a debate. According to one opinion, it's only someone who blasphemes, which means he curses God. Right? The Torah discusses it explicitly. And in another case, it says another opinion is anyone who's stoned to death. But it's only hanged just to put him on display for a short time and he's put down. The Torah says you mustn't leave his body overnight. But that's considered a disgrace.
When does this happen in the Torah? In the 5 books?
Yeah, for sure. Want to show it to you?
No, I believe you.
Yeah, it's there. It definitely says. The Torah says when based him will hang someone, right? They mustn't leave his body overnight on the gallows. They must take him down. The custom was to hang them just before sunset. And that way, they would put him up for 2 minutes and then take him down straight away.
So was this like a law, like a theoretical thing, or was this like from after a story? Like did this happen and then they said, now this is the law?
No.
Or was it,
No.
was it like it was in one of the laws that were just given? Like this is the law.
In the book of Devarim, somewhere there it says this is what you should do.
Okay.
It doesn't say, it wasn't like it happened in the desert and God said, oh, let's do this.
Yeah.
No, it says, when this will happen, this is what you should do.
I only asked.
Did it ever happen? I have no idea. I mean,
Okay. No, I only asked because sometimes there's stories and then Hashem gives the law after.
yeah, sometimes, not this.
Not that.
Okay, let's then keep focus and we can also get so sidetracked in this.
Shmuel.
Yes. So that's the point. That's yes. So that's another violation, right? To hang someone, which is unheard of, and you'll see they violated other things. They left them up hanging for many weeks, right? And didn't take the bodies down. So all these things need explanation. What I mean is, why would David do it? And he asked God, why would God want them to do this? Right? Let's say God wanted the death of these 7 people because these 7 people were wicked or they were tzaddikim, but either way, right? And they fulfilled their time. Why should a person, what's the point of being alive once you've finished your job on earth? It's just a waste of time, right? We're only here to fulfill a job, and once we finish the job, we go somewhere which is much more comfortable, much nicer, so there's no point, right? Okay, that could be, right? But why hang them? Why leave the bodies hanging? Like, that needs explanation, and we'll try and see if we can get an explanation. And at the moment, we're at the point of the story where David has agreed to do this. Pasuk Vav, right? Pasuk Zayin. Vayachmal, oh, this is a tricky part. Vayachmal HaMelech al Mephibosheth ben Yonasan ben Shaul. David had pity. Yachmal is to have pity. Right, you got it? Page 49. The king had pity on Mephibosheth. Who's Mephibosheth?
The one that threw the stones.
No.
No.
A Boshet is embarrassment.
I'll get to it in a
What's the
second.
name?
No, the one who threw the stones was Shimon ben Gera. Mephibosheth is a son of Yonasan. Who's Yonasan? The son of Shaul. It says it all over here. Mephibosheth ben Yonasan ben Shaul. Now, Yonasan was Shaul's son. He was David's best friend. Now, I don't really know who's his best friend, but for argument's sake, there you go. I mean, they made a covenant. They were very close. They were also brothers-in-law because David was married to Shaul's daughter, who was Yonasan's sister. Right? But they were very close. And they made a pact that if anything happens to either of them, they'll look after each other's family. If something happens to David, Yonasan will look after David's family. If something happens to David, then Yonasan will look after. Right? Something happens to Yonasan, David will look after Yonasan's family. Okay? Now, this Mephibosheth was a crippled son of Yonasan. He was crippled because he fell when his nurse was running away when she heard the news of Yonasan and Shaul's death. They were killed in battle. She heard about it. The Philistines were coming to attack. She ran and she dropped this kid, and from then on became crippled. When David discovered him, right, it was many years till David found that he was alive, his son, because David at the beginning of his reign was only king in Yehuda, which was the tribe of Yehuda. Right, so the rest of the country was under the control of one of Shaul's sons called Ishbosheth. Right, correct. The word Bosheth means embarrassment. Why that's his name, I have no idea. I mean, well, Chazal will talk about it, but simply there's no good reason. That's his name. Okay? Now, when David took over the whole country, he discovered Mephibosheth, and then on Mephibosheth lived in David's house. David wanted him to eat on his table, to bring part of the family, because he promised to Yonasan he would look after his family, and most of the family was wiped out by in the battle of Yonasan and his brothers, and this was one of several surviving children and grandchildren. This was one of them, and David took it. He says, "Look, can't really look after himself because it's crippled, and so live in my palace, eat in my palace, and that'll be great." Okay, so David now has a problem. He's now being instructed or agreed to kill 7 of Shaul's descendants. Right? The one he feels closest to is this Mephibosheth. So is Mephibosheth going to be included in the 7? So it says that David had pity on him and didn't want to include him. Al here means because of. Shavuas Hashem, that means the oath of God. Hashem Beino Som, which was between them. Between who? Between David, Ubein Yonasan and Shaul, and between Yonasan, because he swore. David had sworn to Yonasan that he would look after his descendants. Now I've sworn, this is called looking after him, killing him and hanging his body, and that doesn't not find, certainly not a simple way to understand to protect somebody. So David felt a dilemma. He swore, this would be a violation of the oath. Look, he's got to pick 7 descendants of Shaul. That's the agreement. But does it have to be this one, which he would thereby violate his oath as well? That he didn't do. So what did he do? He took others. I mean, basically this passage doesn't say how he did it, but it says that he excluded him, right? Maybe he asked God, maybe they took a vote, maybe they took a lottery, but this one wasn't included. Okay, so I don't know how many descendants of Shaul had alive, how many children and grandchildren were alive, and David's got to pick 7 of them, but this one wasn't included. That's because if he includes him, that's all called having pity. Having pity means I don't want you to be part of those included. It doesn't say David had pity on him because he liked him. Maybe he did, but it doesn't say that. It says, I promised your father, so how am I going to keep that promise? So I can pick anyone. Don't forget, I'm king. So it makes sense for me to pick somebody else. That could be why the apostle says, Shaul HaMelech. It doesn't say Shaul David or David HaMelech, because it wants to stress that in his position as king, he has the right to pick of these 7. He doesn't have to do a lottery. It may be the fairest way to do it, but the king may decide, let's pick the ones who already have children.
Wait, but
as opposed to picking the ones who don't have children yet. Or let's pick the ones who are, I don't know.
I mean, in ancient
But
times,
it was David that made it wasn't the Melech that made the Shmuel's being David.
Correct. But it was the Melech who had to decide to keep his promise or not.
But it says the Melech did this al Shvuat Hashem Asher ben.
It doesn't say being HaMelech, it says being David. Of course, the
Yes.
promise had been between David and an individual.
Yes.
But the right to pick one over the other of the descendants of Shaul, David could do because he was the Melech. I mean, the reason why he did it is because he made a promise. But the power to do it was invested because he was the Melech.
right.
Right? What were you saying?
But in ancient times, this was like an eye for an eye, right? Which is in the Torah.
Well, no, that's absolutely wrong. No. The word eye for an eye, although that's what it says in the Torah, according to our belief, had never been understood literally.
Right. But it is
You
in the Torah.
understand? Yes, correct. But nobody, when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Mount Sinai, and he taught this pasuk an eye for an eye, right? And somebody back in class said, Rabbi, does that mean literally an eye for an eye? I says, no, it doesn't mean literally an eye for an eye. It means you pay. Oh, then Rabbi said, why did God say an eye for an eye if he means pay? So then Moshe Rabbeinu would give a whole explanation. It wasn't made up by the rabbis. It wasn't invented by the rabbis. It wasn't like the rabbis thought it was politically not correct in the times they lived to do an eye for an eye. They said, well, let's pay instead. No, God forbid, that's not what it means. I mean, there are probably some Jews who believe that. But we don't believe that. No, that's always been part of the tradition. So why did God write an eye for an eye if he means to pay? Because God wants you to understand, until you seriously believe that it's an eye for an eye, you're not forgiven for what you did. It's not just, Rabbi Noach Weinberg, the Rosh Yeshiva, used to say, you think, oh, I chopped the guy's leg off, and it's, oh, that's awful, here's a check. Oh, I'll send a check in the post and that'll be it. No, that's not the end of the story. It means you're not forgiven for what you did just because you paid. You have to internalize what an awful thing. And if you really should have your leg chopped off or your eye taken out because of what you did, that would be fair. We don't actually do it, but that would be fair. And when you internalize that, you're going to beg the guy for forgiveness. What can I do for you? And I'll find ways to get you to forgive me for what I did. Paying you is not going to be enough.
So then why does eye for an eye count for murder, for intentional murder? Like if you intentionally murder someone, you got to get killed, right? That
Correct.
So that is an eye for that is.
That is literal, absolutely.
So why is it true in that case?
Because that's what Moshe Rabbeinu said in class. That's what God said. That's all part of the oral tradition. Here it's meant to be. You're right. How do you know what to take literally? You'd never know on your own. That's what the oral tradition is about. Take this literally. Don't take that literally. And there'll be pages of discussion in the Talmud how you can work out on your own that this shouldn't be taken literally, right? For example, an eye for an eye. Somewhere else the Torah says, when you hit someone and he almost dies, right? Then you put him in prison until the guy gets better, because maybe he's going to die. If he dies, then you kill him, right? If not, then what? If the guy gets better, all you have to do is
Lash him.
No, pay the doctor's fees and his loss of work. So it's clear from there that the Torah sees that when you damage someone, you pay. Right?
And that's in the Torah.
That's in the
That's
Torah.
the oral.
Right. So that's the oral tradition. And what I'm saying, there's two things in the oral law. One is the tradition, which means this is what God told Moshe Rabbeinu is how to interpret this. Then part of the oral law is, well, can you prove that tradition from the text itself? So I have like two different sources. One is I know this to be true because this is what we were taught, and my rabbi was taught it. He was taught it from Moshe Rabbeinu, taught it by God.
Right.
But actually, the text itself indicates that an eye for an eye is not meant to be taken literally, because it says when the guy gets better, all you have to do is pay for his doctor's bills and his loss of work. That's all you do. What happened to an eye for an eye? No, that meant pay the value of his eye. So and there's a whole page of discussion on how you know. Same thing in esrog. The Torah doesn't say word esrog. What does the Torah say? On Sukkot, you must take a pre-Eitz Hadar. What does that mean? That could mean anything. It just says it's beautiful. Hadar means glorious. Glorious fruit. Well, I think a melon's a glorious fruit. It's enormous, right? Pumpkin, right? From Cinderella, right? It's enormous. Maybe that's what it means, right? So, the true answer is, well, what did you use last year? What have Jews been using for thousands of years?
Right.
So that's what's called tradition. In the desert, Moshe Rabbeinu took Arba Minim, right? And everyone saw he was using it. It wasn't a pumpkin, it wasn't a melon, it was an esrog, right? But there's still a whole page of Gemara in the Gemara Sukkot. How do you know that Pri Yitzchak means an esrog? And there's a whole page of discussion.
Basically, Moses taught us all the customs, rituals in the desert.
Absolutely.
So
That is our belief.
So like miracles happen, like Eitz Hadar was right there in the desert.
Oh, no, that's another question. Where did they get their esrogim from in the desert? That's another question.
That's a question.
That's a different question. One thing is our assumption that if Moshe Rabbeinu says on the 15th of Tishri you should use a pre-Eitz Hadar, they probably did it in the desert, right? And then Moshe Rabbeinu, two things. He has to tell them what it is and how to get it. So it could be they bought them from passing travelers. Could be, right? It could be that they planted in the desert. It was miraculous, right? That's also good. But the other question is, but how did they know what to use? Because Moshe Rabbeinu told them what to use. So why does the Gemara have a whole page to discuss what an esrog is? And he says, well, why is it called the Hadar? Because the word Hadar is related to Hydra. Hydra means?
Hydrilla.
What does Hydra mean?
Water.
Water, right? So the pre-Eitz Hadar is water from the citrus family. Citrus fruits are a unique type of fruit which has to be watered. Most trees don't need water. Rain is enough. Vegetables need water. Right? You go out, you water your vegetable plant. Trees don't need water. Citrus fruits are watered. So that's why it's called Hadar, because it's a hydrous plant. And the word Hadar in Hebrew doesn't mean glorious. It's related to the Greek word, which means water, a plant, a fruit that needs water. Interesting. That's one explanation, right, in the Gemara. Then one can say that doesn't mean it's only an esrog, it could be an orange. And they didn't have oranges in the Middle East, right? They had esrog, but they have probably lemons, right? So maybe it's a lemon. Okay, so that's concludes. So again, there's a whole page of discussion. Why is it called Pri Yitzchak and how do you know? But the Gemara is not discussing maybe we should use something else. No, it doesn't mean anything. How can you see from the text or from an analysis of the word Hadar, the linguistic analysis of the word, that it actually means an esrog, without having to rely on the tradition? It's always like to support the tradition. I guess that's what we're talking about. So, what were we talking about? Okay, so an eye for an eye never meant that. That's what Rambam says. An eye for an eye never meant. No, Rambam writes, no Jewish court in history has ever taken.
Except if it refers to murder, intentional murder.
Right, that doesn't say an eye for an eye. That's two different things. There's whole. It says when you kill somebody, it says very clear that the guy who does it by mistake has to go to the city of refuge in order that the family member can't kill him. So it's clear that we're talking about killing the guy.
Right, but the whole reciprocal punishment is the eye for an eye is a reciprocal punishment.
Correct, but that's not meant to be understood literally.
Unless it's intentional murder.
No, that's a whole different. That's murder. One's murder and one's bodily damage. There's different areas of.
Right.
And it's not really one big lump.
That's good.
Right? They even have different types of courts. You know, bodily damage, you have a court of 3 judges. A murder trial needs 23 judges. They're a whole different system of law. Okay, all right. And back to the story. So he has pity on him, and we said he has the right to do that, being king. The reason why he does it is because he'd sworn to Mephibosheth, his father, he would look after his family. So who does he pick instead? Pasuk Ches. Vayikach HaMelech. Again, it keeps saying the king, because it's the king who has the authority to make these decisions. It's not a personal decision, it's the king. Vayikach HaMelech es shnei b'nei Ritzpah bas Aya. So she was a woman, that was her name, Ritzpah, the daughter of Aish. She was one of Shaul's wives, as we'll think. And she had 2 sons, and he took these 2 sons. Asher Yolda LeShaul, that she had given birth to Shaul. I mean, she had given birth, Shaul was the father. What were their names? Es Armoni, one was called Armon, Es Mephibosheth. Interesting, it's not the same Mephibosheth, because that would be really silly, right? This Mephibosheth was this guy, apparently it was a family name. And he had 2 people with the same name, right? That's not a big deal. I have lots of granddaughters called Kayla, right? At least 5, I don't know how many I've got, right? They're all named after my mother, right? One's called Esther Kayla, one's called Chaya Kayla, one's just Kayla, but they're all called Kayla, right? So it could be in Shaul's family had more than one son called Mephibosheth, but it's clear there's 2 different people, because one he had pity on, and one is one of the people who's going to get killed. So there's another guy called Mephibosheth. It's interesting, the name Boisheth, as you pointed out, Alan, is one of Shaul's sons, these are his grandsons, one of Shaul's sons was called Ishbosheth.
And maybe it was like a modesty thing. Maybe it was a compliment, recall.
Well, we know that Shaul, one of Shaul's major quality for which he was picked to be king was his modesty. He was shy. When they picked him to be king, he ran away and went and hid in the baggage. And then when Shmuel HaNavi wanted to anoint him, they had to look for him. It means the people had come to whatever mitzvah, whatever that is, to anoint a king. And when it actually came to the time for anointing, he wasn't there. He'd run up. So he didn't want it, he was shy. And that's why a lot of people were not convinced that this would be a good king. And then they, well, this guy's going to be king. But then he showed his, he stood up to his position, and he went and fought, and he won battles, and he was very good at least at the beginning of his reign. Okay? So that could be describing, it was a quality in the family, to be easily embarrassed and shy.
Yeah, good.
Okay. I have another take on it. I'm not sure. There's a place somewhere in Divrei Yomim where Divrei Yomim is like a rehash of the whole of Jewish history.
What part of the Torah is that?
It's right at the end of Kesuvim, which is the 3rd part of Tanach. It's a book that goes right from the beginning right till the end. Very briefly, goes over all the stories all over again. It's not so clear what the point of the book is, right? Most stories are briefer. It doesn't. He talks about Adam, and then goes Adam Sheish. No, it doesn't say. It just tells you a list of names until he gets to exciting parts. It expands on the reign of the kings of Yehuda, which is the northern kingdom. At the moment, there aren't 2 kingdoms, right? But later on, it becomes 2 kingdoms, and it goes on to tells you a lot about the generals and the names of the Leviim who sang in the Beis Hamikdash, and all sorts of interesting details that were not written in the rest of Tanakh. So exactly what the purpose of the book, I don't think anyone really knows. Sort of guesses of what's the point. Anyway, there's such a book exists. It's part of Tanakh called Divrei Yomim. And there, if I'm not mistaken, Ishbosheth is not called Ishbosheth, it's called Ishbaal. Ishbaal. His name is changed. Now, Baal is a very interesting name because Baal is a pagan name.
Man.
Yes, the word Baal can mean lots of things. God's also called Balabais is the owner of the house, right? So Baal just means an owner, but in Tanakh it usually means the pagan worship of Baal, because he was seen as the owner of the world, of the universe. He created it, right? So you have Baal. But it's possible, right, that Baal was given as a name to people, Jews who were pagans. It means there were times before this story where Jews worshipped Baal. I can read it in Shaftim. Asherah, Baal, all sorts of terrible things Jews worshipped. So it could be at that time it became a family name. But then when people became religious, they had to change the names. No one wants the name Christopher, right? No one in yeshiva was called Christopher, right? Why? Because it's such a goyish name. So if that was a name you got because you were brought up not from or as a goy, you'd very quickly change it to Pinchas, a nice Jewish name. That's just how things are, right? So it could, I'm just guessing, could be that this family name was once Baal, And they wanted to keep the name, so it was Murphy Baal, Ish Baal. So they cut off the Baal and they changed it to Boishas, because Boishas were embarrassed. We're embarrassed to use the name Baal, so we named the name Ish Boishas, which is instead of Baal. Crossed it out.
Oh.
You say Kratzmach instead of Christmas. So they said Ish Boishas and Ish Baal. Still got the base, and it's like, maybe. It's just a guess. It's a very different take from what you were saying.
It's a nice drosh.
Yeah, it's a nice idea, but it fits in with the idea that in other places it's not called Ish Boishas, but called Ish Baal, which would be a throwback to the original name, right? And for some reason or other, in Dirayom, it's mentioned the original family name was Baal, and we find the effect of paganism on Jewish names, at least in my opinion.
In like old Jewish names?
Look, for example, you have someone in Tanach called Achbar, which means mouse. A mouse. Huh? You have no friends called Mouse. No, Mickey Mouse, yeah, that's a cartoon, right? No one calls their kids Mouse. Or Hulda.
Well, Abraham, I mean, I know, like
something else. That means Avram.
But his
elevated.
Father, but his father named him that, not Hashem.
So
Well,
what?
Avram.
Okay, so it's a nice name. And no, I'm not saying that all pagan gives nasty names. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but you don't find Jews giving names which are names like that.
Oh.
That's the point. But maybe during a time when Jews were pagans, maybe it was acceptable. I'm not saying everyone had a name like that, but I'm just saying those names appear in places in history where the previous generation were Avodah Zarah. And then the name stuck. So you had someone called Hulda, who was a great woman. She was a prophetess. But why would you call a kid Hulda? Why would you do that? Hulda means a weasel.
Oh, weasel. That's an actual Hebrew word.
It's a what, a name?
Yeah.
Hulda. Like, who would give a kid a name Hulda?
That proves the point that it was like a real world that they were living in. It was a mixed world that they were living in.
Exactly, they were. We clear they were living many of the Jews were Avodah Zarah. And then they became better. And then whatever. That's the whole story of Tanach. The Jews are up and down. So it could be that these names got in. Now, there are other names. Like I've got a friend called Shepsi, which means a sheep. But that's more acceptable because that's a kosher animal. It's Tzvi. These are kosher animals, right? Now we use non-kosher animals as well. For example, Aryeh. That's because Aryeh implies royalty, right? Or Zev, which is the wolf, because that's the animal that describes Binyamin, right? Binyamin is described like a wolf, so that's also become a Jewish name, right? But no one calls their kids cockroach. You just don't do it, right? So why would you call your kid a mouse?
Right.
Mini, but not mouse. You know what I mean? That's the funny thing. Although there's another one called Devaira. Even Devaira is except a bee, because bees produce honey.
Yeah.
Right? They sting, but at least they give honey. So I can hear Devaira is also a nice Jewish name, but no one calls it kids Hulda. Why, that's shocking.
Is Devorah in the Torah as a name?
Well, not in the Torah. Well, yes, in the Torah. Devaira was the nurse of Yaakov. Yaakov's nurse. Nurse meaning his the one who nursed him as a baby. No, Rivka's nurse. Sorry, Rivka's nurse. It says in the Pasuk that when Rivka died, so they sent the news that Yaakov was away from home when his mother died. Yaakov's mother was Rivka, and he was still in Lavan's house. They sent Rivka her Meinekes, Devaira Meinekes Rivka, to go and tell Yaakov the news. So that's the name Devaira. Also, Devaira is a prophetess. One of the prophetesses of Shefta is called Devaira, very famous one, right? So that I don't have problems with. It's Achbar and Hulda that bothers me. So that's my suggestion. So it could be Baal also came from there, but it could be like you're saying. Anyway, that's just an interesting discussion. We don't really know. So he took first of all two sons of Ritzpah Basaya, and they were called Armoni and Mephibosheth. What does Armon mean?
Arman.
We use the word Armon to mean a palace, right? It's also the name of a type of tree. What do you call them? Oh, I had them yesterday for supper. Well, part of my supper. Horse chestnuts. You know what those called? Horse chestnuts? You don't eat them?
I never had that.
Yeah, in winter, you eat them in winter, and you do an X on top.
Oh, chestnut.
Chestnuts. Okay, in England they're called horse chestnuts. So no, chestnuts. Okay, so that tree is called an aramon, but could be that's with an iron. Not sure. Okay. The Es Chameshes B'nei Michal, and the 5 sons of Michal Bas Shaul. Now this is seriously problematic to read this literally, Because Michal, yes, was a daughter of Shaul, that's true, but she was married to David.
Oh, he's giving his own kids.
Well, there's two problems. First of all, it says, Asher Yolda, that she'd given birth, LeAdriel ben Barzilai HaMechelosi. To Adriel, the son of Barzilai HaMechelosi. Now, the problem is, Michal wasn't married to this fellow. Right? This fellow, right, you got it, was married to Meirav. Who was Meirav? Meirav was Michal's older sister. So Michal did not marry Adriel, A, because she didn't, and B, because it was forbidden, and C, she was married to David, right? So this passage makes absolutely no sense to read it literally. So Chazal say that she adopted them because her sister died. These are 5 children who were born to her sister, Meirav, who was married to Adriel ben Barzilai HaMechelosi, and after she died, so Michal brought them up, because she was their auntie, and it makes a lot of sense that she should look after them. And often when you adopt kids, they take on your family name, right? Lots of people do that, right? Mm-hmm. So they take on the new family name, so they just took on their adopted mother's names. They're called B'nai Michal. They weren't actually Michal's sons, but Michal brought them up from childhood and she looked after them. So yes, David was now giving 5 of his adoptive children, correct? When his blood children, David, because David was married to Michal.
Okay.
David's first wife.
Is that the one who he stole from and sent her husband to war?
No. That's Bathsheba. No. This was the first of David's wives. She was called Michal, and she was the daughter of Shaul. Okay, and she adopted her sister's 5 children after her sister died. So that means David now giving 5 of his adopted children. Okay,
he's giving them to who?
To the Gibeonites to kill.
He's killing his own adopted kids.
That's right.
Why did he do that?
Well, who else would you pick? He's got to pick descendants of Shaul.
So it's kind of like he's making a real sacrifice.
Correct. So he's got to pick somebody.
So
we know that, well, it's not just that. Those are probably the only descendants of Shaul alive.
Really?
We don't know. Well, Shaul's Yonasan was killed in battle, right? Malki-Shua was killed in battle. There's another one who was killed in battle. Ishbosheth was killed later on by Rechav and Baana. Right? Does Ishbosheth have other children? We don't know. They're not mentioned. So I don't know how many other grandchildren Shaul had. Right? It could be, like you're saying, David saying, look, I have to make this decision, so I'm killing the ones who are closest to me. It could be. I really don't know. Yeah? I don't know. Anyway, the one person who he had pity on was Mephibosheth, not because he was closer, maybe these guys were closer to him, right? Because they were, right? But Mephibosheth, he promised to look after them. He hadn't promised to look after Meirav's children. He did look after them, right? And he adopted them, but he never promised anybody, so he didn't have that dilemma. But he had the dilemma with Mephibosheth.
You could also say maybe he really didn't love them because they weren't really his kids.
No, but Mephibosheth also wasn't. No, but all of Shaul's descendants weren't really his children. If there really are more, let's say there's another 15 descendants of Shaul. None of them are David's descendants.
Right.
Understand?
I'm saying that's
so he's got to pick the side. The question is, why did he pick them? That's
what I'm saying. Maybe because it's like he just kind of resented them.
Why?
Because
he lived in his house.
I know it's a dark point of view, but when you get if someone's divorced and they get remarried, and then their stepkids come in and they kind of don't like him that much.
Worse than the other grandchildren of Shaul who didn't have any relationship with.
Right.
It could be, but why do you have to be negative?
I mean, I'm saying
why? Why be negative? I mean, generally the custom is to think negative about negative people, right? But we talk about David HaMelech, right? And we want to think positive. We should think positive about him. Probably, if he had a choice, we don't know if he had a choice. There could be nobody else to pick, right? But assuming there are others, then we have to assume that he did this because of positive reasons, which is because you've got to pick. You've got to show that you're prepared to sacrifice and not pick somebody else. So this is the biggest sacrifice you can do, is to pick the ones he was closest to. But I don't know.
But we don't know.
We don't know. But I would rather suggest that than be negative with that.
Yes.
Okay. But that's the mitzvah being done like Avzchus, right? When you deal with tzaddikim, we always give them the benefit of the doubt. So let's do that. All right. So that's all together. 7, 2, and 5 is 7. He gave them into the hands of the Gibeonites. No, he didn't kill them. The Gibeonites, but in Jewish law, that's tantamount to murder. That doesn't make it, it makes it slightly less serious. You give somebody else to kill, then you kill them yourself. It would be what we call it in Hebrew.
I'm sorry, I think we have different books.
No, it's the same book. It's just sometimes it's printed on the front page and the second page.
Oh.
It's the same.
Okay.
I reprinted it when we were halfway through, but I didn't print from the beginning. got it? In yours, page 50 is on the left-hand side, and his is on the right-hand side. We're on the second pasuk on the page, pasuk test.
Okay.
Okay, so as I mentioned, giving Jew over to somebody else to kill is what we call in Jewish law second-degree murder. Giving somebody over to somebody else to kill. The Goy says, hand this guy over or I'll kill you. So the Jewish law is you have to rather let yourself be killed than kill somebody or hand somebody over, even though they're not exactly the same level of crime. If you kill somebody, you'll get the death sentence.
That's first degree.
First degree, you get killed by Basin. If you give somebody else should kill him, then Basin will kill him, not you. Now, even if Basin can't kill, they still won't kill you. If you hire an assassin to kill someone, Basin will not kill you. Understand? There's first degree murder and second degree murder. But either way, you're not allowed to do either of them, even on pain of death. Means if the Goy says, kill somebody or I'll kill you, you have to go kill him. If the Goy says, hand him over or I'll kill you, you also have to let yourself be killed. So the fact that it's slightly lower doesn't make it a big difference. The only difference is whether Basin will kill you for it or not. Either way, it's serious crime which God will kill you for. Either way. Understand?
Interesting.
If you hire an assassin to kill someone, Basin won't kill you, but God will.
I don't know how much I like that, because that's a loophoophole. It's like,
why is it a loophole? It just means that Basin won't kill you.
No, but you could be a mass murderer and do this that way. You won't be killed.
That's true. Okay, that's a very important point to discuss. Right? Basin have their hands tied to a certain extent about exactly how they carry out their trials. Right? So now, if Basin would always follow the strict rules, then people would literally get away with murder. Because according to the strict rules, Basin can only kill someone who was witnessed by two kosher witnesses.
And warned.
Right. So there's so many loopholes. So this question of yours is a question that should have been bothering you a long time. Right? It should be, right?
Yeah.
So good. So we should address that, because it's bothering you. No, if it's been bothering you, you should have asked someone a long time ago to get a good answer.
About why is it so hard to convict a murderer?
No. What are we going to do about all these loopholes? That's not exactly the same question.
Well, I think the reason is Sodom and Gomorrah, right, with Abraham, that it's better to save a city full of guilty people than to kill one innocent person.
That's true, but that's if you're not sure that it happened.
Well,
first of all, if that's the answer, why doesn't it answer the question we just asked now? What do we ask now? Which is, you sort of answers your question.
Meaning
no, you're saying slightly different. You're saying different. You're assuming that the testimony is not 100% foolproof. Right? Whereas if you hire an assassin to kill somebody, you'll be getting away with murder because we know it happened. There's absolutely 100% foolproof testimony that you did it, but you don't get killed because you hired somebody else. Right? That's why it's bothering you. That's why you were bothered only in this class. Up till now you said, well, if we've not got 100...
I know that was the rule.
Right. Now we've got this new rule. It's not good enough, even if you've got absolute clear evidence, you still don't kill him, right? Yeah. So now your question is, what we're going to do about this loophole? So I think the answer to your question is as follows: the Beis Din have the authority. We learned in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. They have the authority similar to the king, which can be used infrequently under exceptional circumstances. The king doesn't have to follow the normal rules of evidence. The king doesn't need two witnesses to kill. That's very explicit. The Rambam says the king can kill based on hearsay, based on women's evidence, based on even non-Jewish evidence.
You can overrule a Sanhedrin.
Well, that's the wrong way to say it. Even if it's not really overruled. Even if the Sanhedrin didn't have the ability to kill somebody, the king will have the ability.
But the Sanhedrin...
No, the other way around. The Sanhedrin, they then pardoned him, not because he's innocent. They just said, although we believe you killed this person, we don't have the authority to kill you. We'll hand it over to the king for him to decide. That's not called overruling. That means if the Sanhedrin makes somebody guilty, the king can't say that he's innocent.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
And the Sanhedrin are not saying the guy didn't do it.
Right.
The Sanhedrin is saying that we don't have the authority to kill him based on this evidence. The king will then have to make a decision if, for the good of society, protect society from this mass murderer, because he's getting away with murder, the king will have to decide whether, in the interest of the common good, it's necessary to get rid of this guy. Right? Usually, the king can't take innocent guys to do that. Although here we have an example of the king took him innocent. Right? Okay. This is a much bigger consideration, which is very, very unusual circumstance. Usually, that's what the king has the right to do, based on less severe evidence. Good? The king will also probably have the right to kill a guy who hires murderers, right? Hires assassins, even though technically it's only second-degree murder, right? I don't know for sure, I imagine the king could do that as well. Or a guy who does abortions, which is also viewed as second-degree murder in Jewish law.
So what you're basically saying is the king can step in and take care of it.
Correct. Now, apparently, there's a sefer called Rosh Hashanah, a book written by the Ram, Rabbeinu Nissim.
I read a little bit of it.
You read Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah.
He writes that the Sanhedrin also has the ability to do this where necessary. I mean, if there's
act like a king.
Act like the king. If there is no king, right? Often we had times when there was no king, right? Especially when we were under Roman rule. But we still have a Sanhedrin who had the ability to carry out the death sentence. Then the Sanhedrin would take on this role. If they felt necessary, this guy, always murdering women, right? So there's only women witnesses because he does it in girls' schools, right?
And women can't be witnesses?
Women, by Jewish law, women can't be witnesses, right?
I didn't know that.
Okay, so now you're stuck. Or he always murders when there's only one witness. Or, like you say, he always hires assassins.
Yeah, he keeps getting away with it.
He gets getting away with it. So then, Beis Din will not let this guy get away with it. They will find a way to get rid of it. So that's, again, those are what we call martial law, where the normal rules of law don't apply because of the circumstance. We shoot on sight. We ask questions later. Why do we do that? Because there's riots. That's what happened in Los Angeles, and I don't remember 30 years ago, the riots. So the police just shot, right? Because there's no trial? No, there's no trial. Sometimes we have to make special rules. So that's really what the king does. The king or the Sanhedrin is allowed. Usually the Sanhedrin is governed by the normal judiciary rules. They can, under special circumstances. The Gemara brings a story about the Sanhedrin killed a guy who riding a horse on Shabbos. Well, riding a horse is not a biblical violation of Shabbos, right? No, there's no biblical violation of riding a horse. It's a rabbinic violation. So why did the king a guy for rabbinic violations? It's not usual. They felt that there was the times when people were just, desecrating Shabbos in ways that were ruining for all the Jewish people. We had to make an example of someone. We don't make examples of innocent people, right? Which I think is a thing that Russians would do. Yeah, we have to find some way then people will feel safe, right? Because the murderer has been caught. Just pick someone and shoot him, and now we can get back to normal until somebody else gets killed, right? So that Beis Din would never do, kill an innocent person. Although again, go back to this story, we've got an example where we've got the king killing completely innocent people. I mean, it could be a king say, hey, he ever asked God and God told him to do it, then, that's not relevant in God's will whether you're innocent or not, because God will just kill you out in any case. It doesn't need you to be guilty to kill you. But usually it's not like that. Okay? All right. So that's the story. I've got all 7, and they are now killed. So, but I'm pointing at it's second degree. God didn't do it himself. He handed them over to the Gibeonim and they did it. By Yoki that means to hang them. Presumably they died by hanging. Right? It doesn't say they killed them. No, it means they hanged them. Okay? In Hebrew, hanging means hanging the body after it's been killed. This means to actually hang them. Lifnei Hashem in front
of... But after they kill, they hang out. After they kill, I thought you have to bury the body immediately.
You do. That's what we mentioned beforehand, that this is a violation of Torah law. Why they did it? Well, it could be because the Gibeonim didn't ask any questions. They weren't very frum. David didn't do this.
But this is only for the Gibeonim.
The Gibeonim did it. Yes, I didn't say we normally do this. No, God forbid.
You don't do this to Jews.
No, Chas v'shalom. We didn't do this to the Gibeonim either. The Gibeonim did this to Shaul's 7 grandchildren.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Right.
Jews don't do this.
Jews don't do this, right. Now, why did David allow the Gibeonim to do it? Weren't they subjects in his country? David should have said, excuse me, I'm in charge here, right? So that we have to understand. Why did David let them get away with it?
With his 5...
These 7, altogether, 7 descendants of Shaul, right? And they hang them Bahar, on the mountain. Which mountain doesn't say. Lifnei Hashem, in front of God. Now what does that mean? It sounds like in a specific mountain. If it was any old mountain, it would say Behar. Correct? Behar means in a mountain. Bahar means in the mountain. So I would guess it means, and what does it mean to be in front of God? I mean, everywhere's in front of God. So obviously it means some specific place.
Maybe like while they were davening or something?
Who were davening?
Well, if there was a service somewhere.
Could have been. It probably means in front of the Mishkan. Right? Or, I've got an even better explanation. Because where was the Mishkan at the time of this story, do you know? The Mishkan at the time of this story was in... just a minute. It was in Givon.
Because this is before the Beit HaMikdash was built.
Yes, for sure. The Mishkan originally been in Shiloh, where the group went to today. It then moved to Nov, was then destroyed in Nov at the time of Shaul, and then it moved to Givon. So it would make sense that the Givonim, we know it's in Givon because at the beginning of Malachim, Shaul HaMelech goes to pray in the Mishkan in Givon.
Okay, I didn't know that Givon is a city in Israel.
Givon is a city just north of Ramat, where Ramat is today.
I thought that that's where the Givonim lived.
No, the Givonim were rich, they were Canaanites, who lived in a town called Givon. They were the ones who cheated Joshua, and now they live in Givon, right? So it makes a lot of sense that in front of God means in front of the Mishkan. So there was some hill there, and they stuck them there. They felt this was a good place in front of the Mishkan, where people would come to the Mishkan. You see, all you Jews should see all these people, right? And you have respect for us, because if you don't have respect for us, we may be outcasts, right? We're the caste, or lowest caste in society, right? And we're the ones who do the janitary work for you Jews. But we've got God on our side, and God made a famine for 3 years until you Jews have some respect for us. And this is what happens to the guys who don't show respect for us. So they were trying to create an effect here, a bit severe, right? But I'm sure it created that effect on the people's. I mean, it could be horrible Givonim. Who wants anything to do with these Givonim? This is how they take revenge. They can't take money for it.
Did you already explain why David didn't just like wipe out the Givonim and just make a new class? Like why he wouldn't?
Because they had 3-year famine. Because God was upset with the Jews. Obviously, God was upset with the Jews.
So he was protecting the Givonim.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Why?
And that's why not? Because these people are being mistreated.
But we told them to wipe out the Canaanites to begin with.
You go back to the whole story. They pretended to Yeshua they were from a far off land, and Yeshua promised he's not going to do anything to them.
Wait. Why did Yeshua promise not to wipe out the Givonim?
Because they pretended they were Givonim.
They pretended
they came from some way off land.
That they weren't Canaanites.
They weren't Canaanites.
Oh, and the text said just kill Canaanites.
Right.
Not
and you said, look, they came and said, we want to make peace with you. So Yeshua said, okay, you want to peace with us? No problem. Yeshua didn't know who they were.
So it was Yeshua's mistake.
Correct. Big mistake. But then when they found out the truth, they wanted to go and kill them all.
Yeah.
And you said, we can't do that. We promise we're not going to do anything with them. So we're going to make a bigger chilul.
It was under a false pretense.
Correct, but still, it's true. Technically, they weren't really bound to their oath. But if they would violate the oath, the Jews are held to a different standard. What's okay for the rest of the world to do, we're not allowed to do. And if we do, then the United Nations will say, you Jews, you're genocide. When we do it, it's called genocide. When other people do it, it's called self-defense. Exactly. So therefore, Yeshua was worried about the Chilul Hashem that would be created by not keeping our promise.
And again, God just said, wipe out the Canaanites, not wipe out anybody in Canaan.
We were stuck now. We promised not to do anything. And
so they sort of talked their way into survival.
Correct. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, they're sort of smart.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So now they're still around hundreds of years later. And now God said, look, these guys are people. Okay?
They're sort of like the Palestinians.
They're people. And they're upset with what you've done to them. And they're all right to be upset. What Shaul did and what the people did, and therefore they're upset. And so long as they have this grievance against you, I'm not going to give you rain, and you're going to have to have food until you get their forgiveness. And this is a very, 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 very important insight. Right?
Yeah.
You understand? The world, or the Jewish people, got a very important message. Just because people are the lowest of society doesn't mean you can mistreat them. And not only that, listen to this, the people who were punished for this were royalty. You understand? In the ancient world, royalty was beyond any type of criticism. The royalty could do what they want. And here God was giving a message. These guys are the dregs of society. They cheated you. They don't deserve any mercy at all. But they're still human beings. And you mistreated them. What do we do to them? Well, Shaul killed 7 of them, okay? And the rest of the Jews just, we're not nice to them. Okay? And that deserves correcting. And if the only way to correct that is to take 7 of Shaul's grandsons and hang them, and that's the only way these Givonim are going to feel better about it. Now, it's not a very nice thing to make you feel better, but if that's the only, then that's what it's going to have to do. I mean, what it's teaching you is when you insult somebody, you make them feel bad, you have to go to the nth degree to get that guy to forgive you.
Can you just remind me one more time?
Because you say, you shouldn't be so nasty. Yeah, but you shouldn't have done this.
Could you just remind me again, what was the grievance that the Givonim had against Shaul?
Shaul killed the Kohanim in Nov.
The what?
The priests.
Okay.
Shaul killed all the priests in Nov.
Who weren't Jewish.
No, priests, Jewish priests.
Why would Shaul kill Jewish priests?
So we can't repeat all the
I'm
whole
sorry,
Tanach in
it's like
short.
at the end.
That's what I say. You came right at the 5 minutes before the end of the
Okay,
film.
okay,
and went over.
Got
So, but they had this grievance against Shaul, okay, for whatever reason. And now God says, now you've got to make amends.
Got it.
So now we've killed 7 of their grandchildren, hoping they're gonna be okay. Now they're gonna feel good about it, okay. But now David's reaction is they feel good about it. We don't like that. I mean, the world has learned a message, very important message. Don't mess with people. You don't mess with anybody, right? And if you do mess with people and you've made them upset, you have to ask their forgiveness, okay? On the other hand, we've also learned that these Gibeonim are not nice people. That's another message we learned, right? And therefore, David said, from now on, we don't marry. We don't mix with Gibeonim. They'll keep to themselves. We keep to ourselves. We have nothing to do with you. So there's no intermarriage. Even though they were technically Jewish, they were seen technically as Jewish. Yes. And they probably kept kashrus and Shabbos and lots of things, but their character traits were still non-Jewish. The point is that they had no mercy. They wouldn't, under any circumstance, forgive Shaul's family until they had these 7 deaths. So that proved that they were technically Jewish, but not spiritually Jewish, not psychologically Jewish. And David said, we don't want to marry people like that. And that's why from this day on, it became rabbinically forbidden to marry these guys who were called Nesinim. Now, why they're called Nesinim, the word Nasa means to place. Because they were placed, they had a place. Not just because they lived in a certain place. They were placed in a certain place in society, keep amongst yourselves, stay there, and leave us alone. And then from then on, I don't know whether they've disappeared in history, and no one today knows that he said it from the Nesinim. What happened to them? They probably became Christians or Muslims or Jews or I don't know.
Can we apply this also modern day to like very like Jews shouting that free Palestine and all this stuff, and the rabbi with a Palestinian how do you say towel on this? I don't know how to say on this thing. Like there's psychological.
No, only in your opinion.
No, I know, but is it Jewish? Is there psychologically Jew? Is there psychological?
Well, in your opinion, the guy's acting non-Jewish. But it's just your opinion. So I think it's a big-headed to think that you have a monopoly on Jewish opinion.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying
you are. No, you are. You are. That's exactly what you're saying.
Well,
because you've assumed. See, David HaMelech assumed that a guy who is nasty, right, and wants the death in revenge, right, is acting non-Jewish. Correct?
Yes.
Now, you've now assumed that someone who supports a Palestinian state, right?
Yeah.
In your mind, that implies the death of other Jews, right?
Does it not?
Right. So first of all, you've never spoken to one of these people, so you've no idea, right? Correct? You've never asked them. You just jump to conclusions that it must be that this is the way they think. Okay?
Right.
No, I understand. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying you made an assumption that someone who supports a Palestinian state is, by definition, cruel and doesn't care about Jewish lives. Correct? Because you can't think of any other way out of this equation, right? But you've never given the guy a chance to defend his position or talk to him. So you don't really know the way they feel about Jews. Means if you met someone like that on the street, okay, and you had a flat tire, right, and he was driving past you in a car. So most people don't stop for guys with flat tires, right? There are a few people who do, right? If you saw somebody who's Jewish, you'd be more likely to stop for them. Correct?
No.
No?
I would stop for it.
You would stop for every guy with a flat tire?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you'll probably get mugged one day. Because a lot of these guys are just trying to...
Okay, now I use my common sense.
Oh, you use your common sense.
I'm not looking at seats.
The point is I'm not trying to judge the story from your perspective. I'm trying to be... Let's not judge people by your standards, right?
Okay.
Most people are more likely to help Jews than non-Jews.
Okay.
Most Jews, because... Like most Goyim will help Goyim. There's a Jew who wants to help a Jew, right? But most Jews have the same attitude to Goyim as well, right? Especially Jews who suffer from Goyim and suffer from anti-Semitism and know what it means to be a Goy, and therefore they have animosity. That's just the way the world is. So you're not like that because you love everybody in the world, but you have to appreciate that not everybody's like you. Okay, all right. So now, if this guy was driving past you and he saw you there with your teacher's new keeper, right? And you say, oh, I don't like Jews, I don't care, I want a Palestinian state, I want them all to die in any case. So it's not going to help you fix your tie. That's what you assume. But I think you'd be very surprised to find that you're wrong. I think if you knocked on his door and you said, well, I've got nowhere to stay for Shabbos, he's not going to say, go to the goy next door, because the goy next door is not going to let you in, correct? Right? Is he going to let you stay there for Shabbos? Well, he doesn't care about you. He'd just rather you all die because he wants a Palestinian state. I think you've come to a conclusion which is completely false.
I don't know.
Your assessment of the reality is that a Palestinian state would mean the death of millions of Jews. And therefore it must be he doesn't care about the death of millions of Jews. He could just be either disagree with your assessment.
Well,
he could be mistaken.
In his defense, you sort of open up this door by saying that the Gavonim didn't have a Jewish neshama.
Well, yes, David HaMelech decided that.
So would David,
Not Daniel Papa.
So would David HaMelech think that?
And David did that with his Sanhedrin. He said, let's take a vote. Do you think that people who want the death, they openly declare, we want the death of Shaul's grandson, is that a Jewish thing?
No.
No.
But also
now, these people want the establishment of a Palestinian state.
No,
You assumed, I think,
Sorry.
absolutely wrongly, that they want the death of Jews.
No.
You should know when they pray in their prayers, right? You should know, right? You see, you're unfair because you have decided without any discussion.
It's not true.
You've talked to them?
Okay,
Well,
let's
no.
Specifically in the
let him
Torah
revise
Karta,
the statement. Let him
but
revise.
not specifically in the Torah Karta, no. But I've been to Belgium. I spent Shabbos with Satmarnis. I've been to
Go on.
New York. I spent Shabbos with
And?
Shabbos. I talked to them.
Why didn't you
great.
spend Shabbos with them? Why did they spend Shabbos with you? Didn't they want you to die?
No, they were. They were very nice, kind people. And I talked to them about the state of Israel, and it was completely fine.
But
I'm not talking about Satmarniks here.
I know you're talking about Torah character.
Yes.
But you've never spoken to them. So you haven't given them a chance. You've spoken to Sappers and found out they're really nice people.
Okay,
but you didn't give them the Torah character a chance to defend themselves.
The guy is swearing a Palestinian thing.
But you
Holocaust
understand the
people.
Sappers also daven for the dissolution of the state of Israel.
I understand this.
But it's slightly different because you gave them a chance to
No.
defend themselves.
Yes.
You gave them the benefit of the doubt and you stay with them Shabbat and they explain to it. You disagree, well, you keep the nice people.
No, but it's like their whole thing is the whole anti-Zionist thing is based on their rabbi Yotai Tabak. He has a book by Yoel Moshe.
I know.
And he says very clearly, we make it as our fight is not the Arabs' fight. We're not gonna join the Arabs.
Okay, so once it,
And
so,
but Natura
why does the Torah character have to follow Satmar? Why aren't they entitled to their own opinion?
Because they say they follow Yotai, but they say that we are the
So they have a different understanding of what Yol Tataman says, and you've decided they're wrong.
Yotai explicitly said.
But you haven't given them a chance to defend it. You've decided that your interpretation of Yol Tataman is the only justified interpretation, and nobody else is allowed to disagree with you.
Well,
that mine is big-headed.
No,
You think that you're the only one who has entitled to interpret it like that.
No,
Satmar has one. No.
My interpretation is the interpretation that the Satmar
But you've decided that Satmar is right and the Torah character is wrong. Maybe the Torah character has a right to interpret it. Why are they not entitled to you haven't even given them the chance to explain it. You've only heard Satmar view. And they say the Torah character extreme and got the wrong message of real Tatzabah. Right? Well, it's not that I agree with them. I just don't think that's a fair way of judging things. You've always got to give a guy a chance to defend himself. You think they don't have chesed in their society? You think they don't invite people for Shabbos like Satmar do? You think they don't put on tefillin? There's only one area in life. I realize it's got.
They put on tefillin. The Givonim they.
Yeah, but the Givonim were nasty people. They wanted people to die. They took people and murdered them. You've assumed the establishment. Well, I'm saying, Satmar wants daven for the dissolution of the state of Israel.
They daven.
Yes, the God should dissolve the state of Israel without causing any harm to any Jew. That's the way they pray. Now, that's great. Right? In their opinion.
Yeah.
Other people think that that's crazy. Other people think that that's self-sacrifice. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
but
I don't have a problem.
You don't have a problem with that.
I disagree with that. I don't.
Yeah, you don't have a problem with that. Why do you think the Turikati take it actively and said, let's be involved in the dissolvement of the state of Israel without causing any harm to any Jews. How will that be? Well, the same way as Satmar. How does Satmar expect God to dissolve the state of Israel without causing harm to the Jewish people? Satmar will say, that's God's problem, not our problem. God can do anything. Right? All that Torah are doing is take it one stage further and saying, why not do hishtadlus? Aren't we supposed to help God? Just like we do hishtadlus when we go to the doctor, we do hishtadlus when we make a parnasa. We're doing hishtadlus in the dissolvement of the state of Israel by establishing the Palestinian. How will God do it without harming Jews? I don't know. They don't want any Jew to have any harm, not to harm anyone's finger. How will God do it? That's God's problem. Okay, so you disagree. I disagree too. But why isn't he entitled to his own opinion without being considered one of the Givayinim? You know, if you would see that these are people who are nasty and cruel, and they hit their kids, and they play with cats.
They might.
They might do. You might do as well. Maybe Lubavitch do as well. Yeah. Maybe Breslovers do as well. There's no reason to think they do just because he wears a Palestinian scarf. You understand? They believe that the one thing that's preventing Mashiach coming is the state of Israel. Right? So the sooner we can get rid of this, right? It won't be a bloodbath here. As soon as we can dissolve it, then Mashiach will come. Because it's the only thing in the way. Why do they believe that? I don't know, it's their opinion.
Wait. What do they believe?
They believe that the one thing that's preventing Mashiach coming is the establishment of the state of Israel. Because God wanted to bring Mashiach, but then the Zionists established a state which is now instead of Mashiach.
Then why wouldn't have Mashiach come in the last 3,000 years when there was no state of
Israel? No. The time had come. 1948 was the year that Mashiach was meant to come. And the Zionists ruined it all.
No, they thought that year?
Yes. Yes, it's written in the Zohar. It's not like made up. These things are all well sourced.
Wait. In the Zohar, it says in 19th year.
Yes. I've seen it written down.
That's a weird coincidence.
Of course it's a weird coincidence because it's real. It's not a coincidence. That means, what does that mean? That means the forces of Geula were there, waiting to be generated in the right direction, and someone came and took them and used them wrongly. That's all.
So you're saying the year 1300, 1400, 1500, they were all like, wait till 1948?
No. There's lots of dates that are given over the years. Lots of dates which were opportune.
And did a lot of them come true?
Well, different things happened then. Sometimes other things that happened. I don't know. Well,
I heard like the Titanic was supposed to sink, the stock market. I've heard stuff like that.
Anyway, this is one of that's their belief, so it's good. I don't know why the Torah cats are like, So the Sammers disagree.
That's fair.
It's just more extreme. Everyone thinks that somebody else is more extreme.
Crazy, it's so crazy. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
There's also something called mental illness.
Yes, but you have that amongst individuals. You don't have that amongst groups of people.
Well, they'll follow their leader.
That's if there's a leader who's got mental illness, but there's no leader. It's not like there's not one charismatic.
The Nichiro Karte don't have a leader?
Not in the sense of one person who's charismatic, like a cult. It's not like a cult. It's not like what's it called?
Lev Tahor.
Lev Tahor. That's a cult. Yeah. And the Turk is not a cult. It's just a more vocal, active form of Haredi Judaism.
So what you're saying is when the Nichiro Karte are on the record meeting with Ahmadinejad and all the Iranian.
One second. Didn't Yitzhak Rabin meet Arafat on the White House? You don't make peace with your friends. You make peace with your enemies. That's who you make peace with. Nobody loves Ahmadinejad. They're not stupid. They don't like him. But that's the solution to the Zionist problem. The Zionists have made a permanent problem in Jewish history, which is we have here a permanent state of war, which there's no solution to. You agree with that? Zionists established here a state of Israel, which is a permanent state of war. Since 1948, there has been permanent war with tens of thousands of casualties. Right? It prevents the next Holocaust. That's the biggest joke you ever heard. Right? Yeah, that's what's resulted as a Zionism. That's what it's created. A permanent state of war. And there's no solution.
But wasn't there tons of fighting back then in the time of the Torah? With
not a permanent state of war. Like no one had a claim on this land. Right? Everybody knew except the Zionists that there would never be peace here. Because no Muslim is ever going to live at peace with the fact that Jews control Israel because it's against Islamic law. Like that a non-Islam should control an area that was